going on, guys? It's Ben with Poor Boys Diesel here. Today we got a 2017 Ram 2500. I did a timing case gasket on it, but I'm getting ready to do the valve adjustment on it. And if you watched our previous video of the valve cover gasket replacement, we kind of touched base on it, but I didn't really get far into it. So today we're gonna get a little deeper into a valve adjustment and how to do it. Some simple tools you'll need: 5mm Allen, a set of feeler gauges that goes up to 20,000. You need a 9/16 wrench, and I just have a couple different, 5mm Allen options and a offset 9/16 wrench here. You're gonna want to be able to turn the motor over, so you either need a 15mm socket on a breaker bar, or they have a barring tool for the Cummins. Unfortunately for me, mine grew legs and walked away, and I am unable to find it, so we're going to be using a 50mm socket today. All right, first things first, you're going to want to gain access to your valve train. To do that, you're going to want to pull the valve cover. It's up to you whether you want to pull the injector harness and rocker box. I usually do, just because it makes it a lot easier to get a feeler gauge in there. But once you get access to your valve train, you're going to want to find top dead center. Luckily, on the common rail trucks, they have a top dead center mark on the balancer. It's kind of hard to see because the truck's so rusty, but I like to take a paint marker and mark the line just so it's easier to see from up top. Obviously, it's not going to be as easy for somebody that has a truck together. You're going to want to peek at it through the top between the fan and the fan shroud. But once you get this top dead center mark found, you want to put it at 12 o'clock. 12 o'clock will put either cylinder 1 or cylinder 6 at top dead center. And to find out which one's at top dead center is going to grab the intake rocker and the exhaust rocker and make sure they're both loose. That one's a little tight, but it's loose. Cylinder 6 is going to be tight. You're not going to be able to move them at all. So that's, now you know cylinder 1's at top dead center. From here, there's a sequence to this. When cylinder 1's at top dead center, you're going to want to adjust intake rocker 1, 2, and 4, and exhaust rockers 1, 3, and 5. We'll show you how to do that right now. So spec on these, the tightest you can go is 6 thousandths on the intake. As loose as you can go is 21 thousandths. The tightest you can go on the exhaust side is 15, and as loose as 34 thousandths. A lot of guys will run just straight 10 thousandths on the intake, 20 thousandths on the exhaust. I personally like to do 8 thousandths on the intake, 18 thousandths on the exhaust. Just makes the motor run a little bit quieter. You're not going to notice much of a performance difference, if anything at all. But I personally think it makes the valve train a lot quieter and a lot cleaner. So we'll go ahead and get into it. We're going to start with intake 1 at 8 thousandths. Grab your 8 thousandths feeler gauge. You want to stick it between the rocker and the cross bridge. And as you can see, it is way too tight. So what we're going to have to do is break open this adjuster nut. Grab your 5mm Allen and just back it off a little bit, just enough to get the feeler gauge in there, and run it back down until you feel slight drag. You don't want it so tight where you can't get the feeler gauge out, but you also don't want it loose enough to where it just easily falls out. You want to feel just a slight drag on the feeler gauge. Once you feel that drag, hold the Allen, go ahead and tighten your adjuster nut back up. Double check with the feeler gauge, and that cylinder's done, or that rocker's done. Next one in the sequence is 1, 2, intake. So that one feels better than the last one. It's a little loose. So we're going to go ahead and readjust it. Keep your feeler gauge in there. Tighten your Allen and feel for that drag. Go ahead and tighten your nut back up. And move on to your next one, which is cylinder 4 intake. Yeah, that one feels not too bad. Just gonna go ahead and refreshen it here. So, if you have to force the feeler gauge like that, it's gonna be a little too tight. So you wanna back it off until you feel just a slight drag. All right, intakes are done. Now we can move on to the exhaust. All right, let's do the exhaust side now. 18 thousandths. All right, now that we got our first sequence done, intakes 124, exhaust 135. We're gonna go ahead and take our barring tool, spin the motor over 360 degrees until this mark is back at 12 o'clock. And make sure you get it as close to 12 o'clock as you can. Doesn't have to be perfect. A little bit more. Nice little tip also. If you line up with the injectors themselves, it's pretty close to 12 o'clock and it'll work also. So now that we got it rotated 360 degrees, cylinder 6 should be at top dead center. Intake is loose, exhaust is loose. Intake and exhaust in cylinder 1 should now be tight, which they are, cannot move them. Now you're ready to finish this off with your last sequence. Last sequence is going to be intakes 3, 5, and 6, and exhaust 2, 4, 6. Same thing, intakes are going to be 8 thousandths, exhausts are going to be 18 thousandths. We're going to go ahead and start with the intakes at 8. After all your valves are adjusted, you want to make sure your adjusting nuts are tight. Torque spec on these is 18 foot-pounds. Make sure you have a nice quality torque wrench to make sure you get that torque. If you do not, I have seen these adjuster nuts back off and cause issues. All right, once you got your last sequence done, ran, adjusted to your liking, you're good to go. You're good to put it back together. You're going to put your valve cover back on, your rocker box, whatever you ended up taking off. Make sure you pull out your barring tool and or breaker bar from the crank before you start your truck. That could be very bad. But yeah, this is very crucial for engine performance, especially the higher mileage trucks that have never done it before. Service intervals, I believe, are anywhere from 70 to 100,000. You want to check your valves, at least check them, if not readjust them. Anytime you pull your rockers off, anytime you pull or swap out your push rods, valve springs, anything to do with the valve train, you always want to at least check your valve lash. If not, just readjust it, run through it. That way you know it's right. Yeah, if you have any questions about getting your valve covers back on, just refer to our last video, and have a blessed day.